The Tomb Raider franchise was one that I completely missed the boat on when I was growing up. Don't get me wrong, I was familiar with it, especially when the live-action movies were made. But the games themselves never appealed much to me. Sometimes it's hard for me to imagine why, especially since at least one of the games includes dinosaurs, which, as many of you know, is my main obsession outside of Halo. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that some of the older games were just too dull to look at least for me anyway. The colors are so dark and bland, and the graphics aren't particularly good, so to speak, even for their time. Then, I had a conversation with my friend Melanie Mack, which, if you don't already follow her on social media, you totally should, and she suggested that I give Shadow of the Tomb Raider a try. I had no idea where to begin with the franchise, but she informed me that for a noob such as myself, it would be a good place to start. So, I bought myself a copy of the game over Xbox Live and gave it a playthrough. My reaction? Well, much like my uncle's relationship status, it's complicated. Let's start with the things that I really did appreciate about the game. First off, the graphics, while not the best I've seen for a 2018 game, are at times very stunning and beautiful to see. Since a large portion of the game takes place in the jungle, you get to see all the brightly illuminated colors of all of the vegetation, as well as the Incan ruins. The lighting oftentimes also plays a major role in the many puzzles contained within the game, and the effects can be truly stunning when used at the right times. It's also always impressive to see the in-game graphics used in the cinematic cutscenes as well, as it allows you, the player, to truly appreciate the amount of detail that went into their design and creation. That's another thing I have to point out here. The game is very cinematic and does a wonderful job at transitioning from gameplay to QuickTime events. In most games, QuickTime events typically bug the hell out of me, but not here, as the transition is seamless. The story itself is also interesting, albeit at times hard to follow, as you play Lara Croft, an archaeologist who discovers a dagger that could ultimately lead to the, and I quote, remaking of the world. An organization known as Trinity seeks this power for themselves, and it's up to Lara to try and stop them before a series of cataclysms can occur. I won't tell you much more than that in case you want to experience this game for yourself, as I try to keep my reviews mostly spoiler-free. However, this is where I started having, well, some issues with the game. The game itself is long. Now, to be fair, for a lot of people, they may see this as a net positive. I hear a lot of complaints about how games nowadays are too short and need to be longer. But for me at least, having a game that's around 6 hours long is perfect. As a working adult, this length feels perfect for a game. Long enough to appreciate the characters and story, but not so long that I have to invest too much of my free time just trying to beat it. If you're not well versed in the game, it's easily around double that length, and that's not even counting all the times I've watched Lara either get impaled or fell to her death, which I'll admit happened quite a bit. I do have to give the game some credit here, as it's good at pointing out where you need to go and what you need to do to get from point A to point B. Well, at least most of the time. You still need to keep a sharp eye out for things like climbable surfaces and such, and this is where the puzzle factor comes into play. While this game does have several both stealth and shooter segments, it's largely a puzzle game. Some of the puzzles are well thought out and complex, while others are pretty straightforward. However, because of the mix of combat versus puzzle play, there can seem like a lot of downtime between encounters. This leads to the game feeling like it has a lot of lulls in its action. In fact, a few times the puzzles were annoyingly complex, and I say this as a huge fan of the Portal games. Every now and then I would find myself looking up how to complete them on YouTube, and believe me, when I say it, it doesn't make me proud to admit it. Some puzzles require you to explore every nook and cranny of the area in order to complete it, and after a while, that just gets boring. I'd rather progress through the story and find out where the plot goes, rather than spending more than half an hour on one complex puzzle before moving on to the next one. Again, the puzzles aren't usually this complicated, but it happens enough times to where I find it to be annoying. You could account for this for other reasons. For one, I'm still new to the Tomb Raider games, and had I played the others, maybe I wouldn't have had so much trouble on my first playthrough of this one. Perhaps it's because I'm starting to get old and I have less time for games. But still, when it comes to rating games, I go with my first impressions. Perhaps if I gave this game a few more playthroughs and even learned to speedrun it, I'd grow a more deeper appreciation for it. It's just not that easy though when I can think of several games that were able to do better when it came to both the combat elements as well as the puzzle elements. Resident Evil 2, the 2019 remake, is the first game that comes to mind as one of the more recent ones. When it comes to the puzzle elements of the game, I still think Portal did it best. Are the two games alike? Well, some might say it's comparing apples to oranges, but both games still require you to perform a series of intricate tasks in order to proceed to the next area. And this brings me to my next qualm. Remember when I told you that I considered the story, at least at times, hard to follow? That's another issue I had with the game, as I never felt the sense of urgency to progress through it. It's a slow burn for at least a fair amount of the game, and it takes a while for things to start getting truly interesting. There's even this part where you play as Lara as a child that seems like it was just shoehorned in there. It's not particularly a long segment, but it also easily could have been cut for time, as it doesn't offer much for additional character context. Don't get me wrong here, there are probably a lot of you out there that are thinking that I didn't like the game, and to be blunt, that's not true. As I said in the first segments of this review, there are certainly a lot of things I like about it, and if I gave it more time, perhaps it would start to grow on me a little bit more. But this is one of those games I consider to have a very niche audience, and as I said before, I feel like I just missed the boat on this particular genre. So for me at least, I'd say that Shadow of the Tomb Raider is worth buying if you can find it on sale. So, Shadow of the Tomb Raider. Have you played it? And if so, what did you think about it? What's your favorite Tomb Raider game? Or, better yet, what's your favorite puzzle game out there? I look forward to hearing your thoughts and opinions in the comment section below, and I'd like to take a moment to thank each and every one of you for taking the time out of your busy day to sit down and watch this video. I do hope that you enjoyed it, and if you did, I hope you'll consider subscribing for more great content right here on the channel. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you all have an absolutely wonderful new year. I'll catch you all right back here next time in 2020. And as always, I'm the Tyrant, signing off.